All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Katekar. Thank you so much for joining us at UnLearn Series, and we're kicking it off the UnLearn Series with you. And this whole series
Wow,
has been
thanks.
dedicated to understanding what exactly is the learning and development scope in 2021, and what are the things specifically
Mhm.
LnD heads, LnD managers should unlearn so that the learning outcomes of the organization are achieved. So I would like to firstly understand about your role in your organization.
Okay. So, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Omkar. It's a pleasure to join you today. Now, coming to your question, I work with corporate HR in Raymond. So, corporate HR basically, as the name suggests, it is a group HR for the Raymond Group. So, Raymond is primarily known for its apparel textile products, but it's just not about that. It's into FMCG, it's into real estate, it's into denims, it's into engineering as well. So, it's a huge line of there are huge line of business. There are multiple businesses involved, multiple SBUs involved, and I look after a group learning and talent initiatives for Raymond. Okay, that's the scope about the role. Moving to what I actually do, I lead talent development initiatives at Raymond Group level. And when I say that, the flagship talent development program, that is ELP, Emerging Leaders Program, and there is a tier 2 BU focused talent development program named as Raymond Leadership Academy that I look after. Then there are multiple initiatives such as competency cascade, succession planning. So whatever is planned at a group level, I am generally a part of it. So that's the scope of the role I have.
Okay, all right. That is very interesting, and that kind of steers me to the next question about what was the motivation of
Sure.
you to actually join the learning and development? There are a lot of
Mhm.
diverse aspirations, and what was your motivation or aspiration to enter such an intriguing yet challenging field?
Yeah, so intrigue is something that actually got me going. People development has always been something of a mystery to organizations across the globe. So something that is very interesting. At the same time, figuring out what drives humans, figuring out what are their motivations for a particular role, particular job, or even why are they there at a particular point of time in an organization, in a role, and where they want to go. That is a very interesting thing to do, and aligning it with your organization's goals, aligning it with your organization's objective is something which is an extremely challenging thing. So this intrigue, this piece of challenge is something which always interested me. And then comes the technicality of actually implementing all these things. What I just mentioned previously sounds good on a macro level, but actually going ahead and implementing it is a huge task, because all the stakeholders, managing all the stakeholders, right from the CEOs, the top management, to the line managers, to the talent or the participants of a particular program themselves, managing them all, satisfying their aspirations, satisfying the objective, whatever was set out, is something of a challenge, and making it happen operationally is something which is very interesting, because uh, if let me just put out an example. If you draw an IDP, when I say IDP, I mean an individual development plan. We set out certain initiatives, certain interventions for an individual. On a piece of paper, they look wonderful, but how do we actually get them to life? How do we review them? How do we update the stakeholders? How do we check the progress? Because if you look at Kirkpatrick model of learning, 5 levels of learning, no organization, in my knowledge, has attained the fifth level. So that is something which actually got me interested in learning and development and talent management as a whole. How do we actually bring this to life? How do we actually operationalize it and make it practically implement? We can practically implement it. Many people, let's not say many people, generally what happens is we can make flashy presentations out of learning and development initiatives. We can do a lot of stuff, but how does it actually come to life is something which is very interesting, and which which I find extremely motivating to work in this space. That has been something which actually drives me a lot, because uh, if you don't bring it to life, and if you just keep it on a flashy slide, doesn't mean anything for me.
So, that's one of the most interesting facets about, like, how
Mm.
do we actually transform something on the presentation. We create a lot
Yeah,
of learning goals, learning outcomes, but then when we start seeing people actually embody it, I think that's one of the better feelings in the world,
yeah,
right? But
that's
one of the only challenge what most L&D managers and heads end up facing is this whole facet of behavioral change, right? And everybody is trying to consult a behavioral scientist by saying that, on paper it looks nice, the motivation on paper it looks fair. You have a reward in the end for the person to end up learning, but more often than not, this thought to action of people wanting to learn and people actually executing that learning goals of theirs. How do you think that this kind of a behavioral change can be driven? Like, what according to you can be a great mantra for driving that behavioral change?
first thing uh, should be the readiness of the ecosystem.
Mhm.
If you don't have an ecosystem that's ready, all your initiatives are going to fall flat on your face. So having an ecosystem which is perceptive, which is open, which is acceptable of the change that is required in themselves, that we have to evolve to the next level, to kind of take organization to the next level. It's just not about processes, it's just not about cost cutting or cost efficiency, it's just not about having better technology. Having an ecosystem which is conducive for talent development and talent retention is something which is extremely critical. For instance, I run a talent development program in which there are X number of participants who are identified as high potentials by the organization. But if the ecosystem is not perceptive of them as high potential, I can't do anything about it. If ecosystem tomorrow tells me that these people are not fit for a particular role, but they are high potential, then what's the point of them being high potential? So the ecosystem readiness of taking a bet on a talent, giving them fast-paced career growth is the critical point that that should be there, first of all. Then what matters is execution, execution, execution. Everything will drive down to execution. Without execution, nothing will move, because um, uh, L&D folks are prone to making fancy presentations, talking sweet, talking nice. But when it comes to execution, uh, it can go either ways. So how you drive execution is something which is very critical. How do you create an ecosystem? So in my experience, we have created multiple forums, multiple bodies which govern all these processes, and these forums and these bodies have leadership as a part of them. That's how the maker checker logic or maker checker concept is kind of embedded in everything you do, so that everything is tracked, everything is in in check, and nothing falls off the cliff. Something on those lines is the thought process there.
On that thought of actually executing all the
Mm.
fancy presentations, what we do, LND as a department, and we can be really honest with ourselves, in the
Yeah,
Indian corporate space, it is looked as good to have rather than need to have, right? This whole concept of
yeah.
learning department came from West Europe, US. What is your opinion on that? Like, is the Indian market gradually maturing towards identifying LND as a need to have department, or it still is good to have?
Uh, Majorly, it's good to have, but there is certainly a shift towards need to have, because like there have been some pioneering processes in Indian organizations such as Tata's having their TAS, and Aditya Birla having their own talent development program. These programs have really pioneered and set out an a benchmark for organizations to follow suit. And people have seen the results. People have seen the importance of building their internal talent pipeline. Sorry, I forgot to mention Unilever, L&T as well. They have been the pioneers of this in Indian landscape. Unilever in India, I mean to say, not the global one, but yeah. So these organizations have shown us the way that developing internal talent and developing internal people is critical for business continuity, for having that kind of having that kind of orientation, because what happens is, if you don't have such programs, if you don't have such initiatives in place, tomorrow if a critical position is open, for whatever reasons, be it a resignation, be it a firing, anything can happen, be it an unnatural death, whatever. So what are we going to do? Do we have anyone ready to fill in those shoes? Is a question we have to ask. And organizations are becoming more and more aware, and I'm sure the current pandemic has given enough time to organization to reflect on how does our leadership line look like in case something goes haywire, uh, if there is a problem in there. So uh, it's definitely moving to a direction where it is a must-have thing in organization rather than just a good to have kind of fancy thing.
Talking about must have thing in the organization.
Mm.
According to your experience in the LND, can you please tell that one LND practice which you want the corporates in India to stop doing? For you, it does not add any value.
Okay, that's a bit interesting one. Don't set up an LND. Don't set up a LND department because you want to show it to your shareholders, your investors, that we have such an initiative, we have such a department in place. If you are serious about developing your people, please go ahead and set a LND department. No issues with that. But don't do window dressing.
Yeah.
Is I want to say. That's all.
Like, do you even I think I can agree to a large extent where an
Uh,
LND department which has started by, I don't know, the categorically Lala company that we started
yeah, yeah. That's what I was hinting to.
and then you just see that the LND goals are the investment is very slim in that
Yeah,
LND space, and then just there's a window dressing kind of a format. But on the other
yeah.
side of the story, which is that one best practice which you think has emerged in the last couple of years in LND, and it has completely changed the game, the way employees are learning in the Indian workplace?
Uh, one thing is for sure, which pandemic has accelerated is online learning, online collaborating online, be it any tool. People have become more perceptive of learning online, collaborating online, doing stuff, projects on multiple platforms that we have today.
Mhm.
So that I know a few people who have had their first, and I'm talking about seasoned professionals here, who have had their first work from home day
Mhm.
after the lockdown in
Okay.
their, say, 20 odd years of experience in their life. So when that kind of shift happens from the top, it certainly percolates down, and uh, and we become more open. Say, uh, 2-3 years back, if I say Coursera पे मैंने आईवी लीग कॉलेज का कोई सर्टिफिकेशन लिया है, uh, the perception of that 3 years back and today would be different. Like, yeah, he must have really done something on Coursera, and Coursera also has some metal to them that they are offering such courses. So one big change is online learning and collaborating online. And second thing is leadership understanding the importance of learning and development. I might contradict here a bit, but from my previous statement. But organizations have started to understand the importance of learning and development, building leadership pipelines, having talent development programs, and working towards that. We are not 100% there, but definitely there is a step in the right direction.
Interesting. I want to ask you, I used to work in the corporate space, and whenever I used to attend these LnD trainings, there was a high mood and then there was a low mood, right? And the low mood typically used to happen post lunch, right? So I want to ask you that which are the kind of people do you like investing LnD programs in, right? Like, what is the kind of mindset you're looking at?
The answer is quite straightforward here. The learning mindset, people who are driven to learn or open to learn, who are motivated to learn, that's it, who are learning and implementing. It's very straight, and it's quite, evident in these people who are open to learn every day. They will come back to you, they will tell that, I attended X training, these were my 3 takeaways. I have implemented 1 or 2 of these takeaways and ran a pilot. From that pilot, these were the learnings again. And the cycle is again continuing, that I'm learning from that pilot and then I'm going back to the trainer that these are my learning. So people who have the drive to learn definitely are there. So the answer is quite straightforward to that question.
So how
So
do you
these
take
people.
this? Like, I'm assuming, unfortunately, that these are not the majority of people within the organization.
Yeah,
So how do you take the
yeah.
attitude of these learning motivated people, and what, according to you, can be spread all across? Because that is essentially the reversing of the rotten apple theory.
Yeah. So, so you have a battery of assessments. Basically, they talk about potential. When they talk about potential, we map them in 9 box or whatever methodology the organization is using to identify the high potential folks. Once you onboard them into a particular initiative or a program, the difference is quite evident in the way they approach to the whole program. Like in say 10 odd people, I will have 2 3 people who would be extremely passive even if they are high potential. So let me give an analogy. There is Vinod Kambli and there is Sachin Tendulkar, much cliched analogy, but it stands true.
Yeah,
It stands true. Like Vinod Kambli is also extremely talented,
yeah,
but at the same time, the attitude,
yeah.
the approach, that is what makes the difference. So even if we have those high potential folks on the program, the attitude, the approach, the willingness to learn, the willingness to implement, own up their own development, because it's not my development, it's your own development at the end of the day. So how they own up and how they act, how they carry themselves, it's quite evident. And there are multiple, multiple indicators to this. Say, how do they approach the whole training program? How do they own up the IDP? How they interact with the stakeholders? How they interact with the managers? How they kind of report back, how they take initiatives on their own, build new products, services. It's quite evident, and it's not a one-off thing. What I'm talking about, you will experience it on multiple occasions, on multiple touch points, wherein you will conclude that this guy has a learning approach. This guy is learning oriented, and it is above and beyond your rating or your assessment scores, whatever it is. It's a overall attitude. In football also we have an analogy. Since you are a Manchester United fan, there is Ravel Morrison. Ravel Morrison, everyone spoke about Ravel Morrison so highly, but what happened to him? So that's how it is.
Interesting. Now, I
Yeah.
have an interesting question for you. Now, if there is, say, a $10 million budget for the L&D department, where would you push the highest amount of money in? In which initiative would you push the highest amount of money in?
Wow, this is an interesting one. I wouldn't, say that highest amount, but there would be definitely priorities on on EI, building EI in an organization is very critical. EI would be something which I would be extremely focused on because um, like the cliche, hire for attitude and build the skills. And these all cliches are there because they stand true to an extent. That's why they are cliched over and over and over. But there is some level of truth to them, is my belief. So I would like to build certain level of behavioral onus on the learning budget. If the organization has a competency model, focus on that and develop those behaviors which are critical to business success. Whatever contemporary new age knowledge is there, that can be built uh, along with the behaviors you're trying to build in, and that doesn't have to take a back seat. What I mean is that doesn't have to take a back seat, but that doesn't require a lot of onus. If the behaviors are plugged in properly, the learning will follow definitely, is what I'm coming to.
Interesting. Now let's like if
Hmm.
every LnD manager, LnD head has this toolkit, right? I want to know what is in your toolkit.
Hmm.
What are the platforms you trust? What are the practices you trust? What are the tools what you use? Because there's a plethora of tools, right? So what can we see
Hmm.
in your toolkit?
Uh, Say, I would give you an answer, but it's not a very tech oriented answer because the organizations are still evolving with respect to acceptance and building tech. Not all organizations that, but in my experience, organizations are still building that acceptance for tech. But I definitely have a toolkit. Um, Having proper mechanisms for tracking your initiatives
Mhm.
with stakeholders. Same, um, your governance boards, uh, your multiple forums, committees at various levels. So, for example, let me give you an example. When I run initiatives, I have a task force with me. So our task force basically brainstorms, validates all the ideas that we want to run, and these task force are critical to implement your ideas, are critical to track what's the progress, because without the buy-in of these critical people, your initiatives won't succeed. Then moving on to the next level is having forums of business leaders who would track, who would take interest in developing your internal leaders. And then there is a senior leadership that's there in an organization. How do you kind of create a visibility of our talent folks in their purview? How do you give them those exposures to the top manager? And such kind of building those ecosystems, building those processes is a very critical part of the toolkit I have. Then is a toolkit of uh, then there is a toolkit of wherein you have whatever initiatives what we are trying to do, say a program uh, on digital marketing, for example. What the business perceives as digital marketing, it's very important to know that, because if I'm a talent member and some ex guy tells me that these are the 10 things of digital marketing that you need to know, but the business perceives digital marketing in a different fashion, there would be no intersection of those two things. So having a business perspective of what you are teaching, what you are trying to embed in a person, having that perspective in and creating their buy-in in what you're going to implement, what you're going to teach. For example, if we are like digital marketing, one example, so we'll get the business leader on board that these are the 10 topics we are going to teach. Does it make sense to our business,
Yeah.
what is being taught? If it doesn't, then what do you think makes sense to? So that kind of, so these small ecosystem tweaks is something which is very critical, I feel. And then the tracking mechanisms of course, monthly tracking, quarterly tracking with multiple stakeholders. One final thing on tech definitely is there. How do you bring in collaboration tools? The tool, the offering you folks have is a very interesting one, because a rapid and and a, and a very fluid idea exchange is something which is very which is kind of a must have in these days, because I might be sitting in Delhi thinking about particular thing, and I'll just punch in, like how I punch in Google, and my community, my tribe, my alumni, my colleagues are there to help me out with something in the context of the organization. I can get 10 things on Google, but it has to make sense also, right, to my organization. They will help me out in the context of the organization. So that is something which is very critical and kind of must have for any talent or a learning professional in today's day and age. So that's the tech piece, one must have kind of a thing.
So over here, my second last question is all the leading question to this. Which is that one metric which you absolutely like to track? Like, which is that one number which you like to review weekly, daily, monthly, and which, you know, the entire LnD department is based on this kind of a number. So which is that one number
Mm.
which you like to track?
Uh, I will give a two-pronged answer to this. Okay, one prong. First answer is quite obvious: the behavior shift that we track. What is pre and post? What are the stakeholders saying? What is the 360-degree survey saying? What is the assessment saying? So the tracking of the behavior. Second piece I want to touch upon is how many success stories we have. So when I say success stories, I imply that I have selected a person in a talent program, in a learning program, with an objective of X. Say he should be a sales head in next 3 years. Has he become a sales head in 3 years or not? Is a metric that definitely needs to be given uh, a significant importance, because that's your end objective. So how many people have moved into their destination roles? How many people have moved into their interim roles? Is a metric that definitely needs to be, you know, emphasized on. See, behavior change is a nice thing. Like the person has improved on, but what has it resulted into is something. At the end of the day, technically organization is not gaining that benefit of the behavior change unless you give him something more to do with. So next level challenge, next level role, that's a metric that definitely is something that should be looked at. And then there are standard metrics. If there are any resignations, if there are any you know, if there is some discontent in the talent, whatever it is, those are the things that. But at the end of the day, what matters is how many success stories you have. Like TAS, you know, prides itself in creating a whole range of leaders across the Raymond group. So that should be the metric we should be looking at.
All right, interesting. So it is ultimately about talent retention. It is about how many people are able to achieve their career goals and how much
Yeah,
contribution has the L&D department had towards helping the employee fulfill that goal. Yeah. Now, you know,
yeah, you can say.
post the pandemic, or I don't know whether we are still pre or post or in the pandemic, but what is one desirable change what you have seen, like, you know, in the LnD space? Like, what good has this pandemic done to the learning and development department, especially in the Indian context?
Okay. Uh, so traditional Indian organizations, like I was mentioning before, they have become more perceptive of online trainings, online learnings, work from home model, work from home concept. Uh, they have become more perceptive, and that has you know, worked wonders, because uh, addressing huge, massive numbers across the organization, across the geography, across the country is something which was not unfathomable, but which was not very accepted. Like doing a online town hall, doing an online training, which is not very highly accepted kind of thing. But after this, the change is like, oh, I have 30 odd people are spread across India. I can just get them on a Zoom call and, send out the message or have a candid conversation, have a focus group discussion, whatever I wish to do, I can do that. And that definitely, helps the L&D budgets as well with respect to traveling costs, stay costs, whatever administrative costs are allied with it. So that has helped a lot. And then the focus on learning itself. So without learning, we are going nowhere. That's the whole mantra of the pandemic, right? To put it in the analogy of COVID-19 itself, first we knew there was a virus. Now today we are on the cusp or the verge of a vaccine. So a huge journey has been traveled, and a lot of research, a lot of learning, a lot of work has gone into that. So, and organizations can use the similar analogy that we know there is a problem in an organization, whatever problem it is, but a lot through a lot of learning, through a lot of research, or a lot of leadership development, those problems can be fixed, and we can move on to the next level. It's something the pandemic teaches us.
Perfect. So I have one out of the box question.
Hmm.
It's also
Okay,
a surprise for you, but
sure.
because I realize that you're a United fan as well. So what learning and development kind of strategy will you adopt from Alex Ferguson and apply it in the corporate world today?
One thing definitely I would love to bring forward is no nonsense attitude of Alex Ferguson. Be it it's David Beckham, be it's Roy Keane or Ruud van Nistelrooy,
Mhm.
doesn't matter. If you just don't have that discipline, if you don't exhibit that behavior, you are simply not fit to be a part of the group, the club, whatever you are. Basically, the ethos you are required to have uh, to be a part of a league or a club or a team. If you don't have it, you are simply out. So that kind of orientation, if we have that, he has laid out his expectations. So Alex is my favorite business leader. So when he arrived at the club, he saw the drinking culture in the club. He saw that the casual attitude of the players. They used to go out partying, do whatever they want to. So he fixed the behaviors first. He fixed the culture of the club first, and after that, all things fell into place. Once that culture was fixed, everything fell into place, and rest is history today.
Yeah.
Whatever he has achieved, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. That
Thank you,
was a
thank you.
delightful conversation and completely no nonsense one, because this is where I think real insights are going to draw. And thank you for helping out the entire LnD fraternity. And I'm sure that a lot of insights are going to be drawn from this.
Sure. Thank you, Omkar. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.